kind of complaints we're dealing with. But I think it makes the general point of access to information. We're having some difficulty here understanding the number of complaints and the length of time it's taking. And so it's a little bit of a wake-up call if numbers like that are readily available on the internet from other states from in similar situations.
We can certainly follow up on that, and let's talk more. You know, I'm not averse to saying we should have a stipulated, deadline date by which an investigation must be completed. It's just, I think as an old investigator, know that sometimes you can't do a hard and fast date, but there should be benchmarks, clearly. An investigation cannot go in a black hole. And you're advised over and over, oh, well, it's under investigation. Well, we understand that it's under investigation, but we need a benchmark. So let's talk some more about that. Any other questions? Oh, Ms. Brown.
Earlier you said that you wanted to find out what the different infractions were, and you wanted to find out some other information. Would it be advantageous for us to have the department develop a matrix so we could kind of see what the issue is? Because everyone's running around and saying different things, and it seems to me that it's a little confusing because you don't have something to look at that's hard and fast. So
I believe Dr. Chapman is still with us and is listening intently to our request. So
thank you.
Good. Thank you. Well, with that, now it's 3:30. We're doing pretty well on time, I think. Let's bring up our final panel. Thank you very much for the second panel's testimony. And I think we'll just kind of tag team this, Dr. Pan and I. We're going to invite up some industry representatives to provide some insight sort of on the third leg of this stool that we're addressing today. We have with us Matt Robinson, the Legislative Director for the California Association of Health Facilities. Welcome. And Jack Christie, Senior Policy Advisor for Leading Age. And gentlemen, welcome as you're getting settled. You have had the benefit of listening to both our administration's description of what is or what situations they're working with structurally, and our advocates that have quite a different view. So what is the industry's view? And welcome, Mr. Robinson.
Good afternoon, Chair Yamada, Chairman Pan, and several members. My name is Matt Robinson. I'm the Legislative Director of the California Association of Health Facilities.
I'm not sure, is your mic on? You might need to pull it forward a little bit. There you go.
Okay.
There.
No. Would you like me to start over? No. Okay. Complaint investigations offer a unique opportunity to identify and correct potential care problems. They can provide more timely alerts of potential problems than standard surveys and target specific areas identified by residents, their families, nursing home staff, and others. State survey agencies generally develop their own investigation procedures, but must follow certain federal procedures at any time. In recent years, the California Department of Public Health has added significant new survey staff, but has made little progress in completing timely investigations of complaints. Instead, as a result of litigation against the department, CDPH has focused on opening an investigation without any time frame for them to conclude their process, and facilities have had to wait up to 6 years for a completed investigation. California nursing homes are subject to an extensive body of state and federal requirements, which dictate most aspects of patient care and facility operation. In 2011 to 2012 fiscal year, CDPH had over 879 L&C field survey staff and an additional 274 CDPH L&C headquarters management staff from its fee-supported budget dedicated to monitoring facility compliance with applicable laws, regulations, and policies. These staff conduct annual facility surveys and detailed complaint investigations to ensure continuous compliance throughout the state. Of the total CDPH L&C division workload, over 56% of the department's time was dedicated to nursing facility oversight. Now, aside from consumer-based complaints, California law also requires skilled nursing facilities to report suspected abuse and neglect. CDPH is only required to make an on-site inspection within 10 working days of the receipt of a written or oral complaint, unless it is determined that the complaint is willfully intended to harass a licensee or is without any reasonable basis. In cases of imminent danger of death of seriously bodily harm, CDPH is required to make on-site inspection investigation within 24 hours. However, there are no timelines on CDPH for completing investigations of these complaints. In 2009 to 2010, CDPH received over 25,000 complaints concerning nursing facilities. The vast majority of them, over 19,000, were self-reported by facilities. Of the over 5,600 that were investigated by CDPH, only 46% of these complaints were closed within 90 days. Stronger policy is needed to restore both provider and consumer confidence in the CDPH complaint investigation system and to address any skilled nursing facility shortcomings. Timely investigations and completed complaints benefit all stakeholders. A successful investigation into a complaint and proper enforcement stems from fresh witnesses, substantiated records, and a due process for all parties. An efficient and consistent investigation system by CDPH is needed for our members to resolve and remedy any issues. It is the California Association of Health Facilities' recommendation that the California Department of Public Health should be able to complete investigations involving nursing facility compliance and issue-related findings within a defined and timely period. More specifically, 45 days for investigating, completing, and closing complaints, and a 60-day completion of annual surveys. Quality of care is the #1 policy to our members, and we look forward to working with the legislator and the California Department of Public Health to ensure this priority.
Thank you very much. So now we've heard interesting different time periods. So, Mr. Christie, what's your view?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee, for allowing me to testify today. Leading Age California thanks you for the opportunity to share observations and recommendations related to skilled nursing facility complaint investigation. My name is Jack Christie, and I'm a senior policy advisor for Leading Age California, an association of not-for-profit providers of affordable housing, assisted living, skilled nursing care, home and community-based services, and retirement community living. While some of our members have been caring for seniors for over 100 years, the association is only 50 years old and cares for about 100,000 seniors across the continuum of care in California. Leading Age members have long stated that the current nursing home survey and certification enforcement system is broken and beyond repair. In 2008, Leading Age and Leading, the national organization formerly called the American Association of Homes and Services for the Aging, Leading Age California is an affiliate. But so the national organization in 2008 published their report on the survey and certification system called Broken and Beyond Repair, Recommendations to Reform the Survey and Certification System. A copy of that report is attached here to and incorporated herein by reference, and you should have copies of it before you. It is not surprising that the problems identified in the 2008 national report are the same problems long plaguing California's nursing home enforcement system. California is home to more than 10% of the nation's senior population, thus closely monitoring the national experience. My testimony today will identify common problems in the licensing and certification enforcement system encountered by our members. But first, the allegation the department administratively dismissed nearly 1,000 complaints against certified nurse assistants required comment. The very idea that a direct care worker could be administratively excused from serious alleged acts presents an immediate jeopardy to residents and puts the provider at risk for retaining or hiring a direct care staff person who may have committed such acts. When a complaint investigation is launched against a direct care worker, it is noted in the department's database. Providers can check this database when hiring new staff or periodically for their existing staff. Administrative dismissal of these allegations provides no protection for residents or providers. we must do better in the 21st century. New delivery systems require new oversight systems. Assembly members here today know well that the healthcare system is shifting and changing at an accelerating pace. What used to be the healthcare delivery system is no longer. What takes its place is still developing and will continue to evolve for many years to come. The regulatory oversight system must keep up. It is time to fundamentally reassess how to regulate long-term care services and supports across the continuum of service and supports needed for community-based care, the predicate for aging in place. Hopefully, this hearing may generate stakeholder interest in rethinking licensing and certification for the 21st century. Leading Age California recognizes that the department must have a sufficient number of appropriate staff to perform its mandated responsibilities under both federal and state law, including timely response to complaints. We also recognize that factors such as turnover and vacancy rates, the length of time it takes to hire and train a surveyor, can impact the department's ability to meet these mandates. Nevertheless, no one is served by delays in responding to complaints, completing the investigations, or in levying and adjudicating any enforcement actions as a result of the investigation. We are very much aware of deficiencies that were issued several months, sometimes years, after the alleged incident. Those sorts of delays neither hold facilities appropriately accountable for noncompliance nor protect residents. Besides complaints, there are several categories of facility self-reported events that must be investigated: instances of alleged or suspected abuse, unusual occurrences, and others. The criteria for reporting are often unclear in statute and regulations, resulting in massive over-reporting by providers fearing penalties for not reporting. Some of these events have specific time frames in which they must be reported. Over the years, even within the department and its district offices, there have been inconsistent interpretation of what needs to be reported. A recent example, some district offices at one point required that all falls be reported as an unusual occurrence. Nursing home complaint investigation enforcement is made even more difficult by the inconsistencies between the reporting requirements for alleged or suspected abuse under the Health and Safety Code and the provisions of the Elder Abuse and Dependent Adult Civil Protection Act, ADAPCA, under the Welfare and Institutions Code. ADAPCA provides strict criteria under which certain allegations of abuse that originate from individuals with dementia or other cognitive impairment do not have to be reported. The Health and Safety Code does not. All providers pay licensing fees to support the licensing workload and to match the federal funds paid to conduct work for CMS. These licensing fees go to pay for mandated work. Currently, neither providers nor residents are getting their money's worth. We are paying for services that we are not receiving, i.e., timely complaint investigations. Recommendations for the near term. In addition to the information provided through the Licensing Certification Program's annual fee report, we recommend a thorough workload report to better understand the reasons for the delays and make adjustments to the licensing fees and position authority accordingly. We recommend to reopen the administratively dismissed complaints against the CNA so that residents and providers are both protected from employees who jeopardize residents' health and safety. We recommend improved clarity and consistency between the various reporting requirements. It is particularly important to better define unusual occurrence, abuse, to bring consistency between the abuse reporting requirements for alleged or suspected abuse in the Health and Safety Code and the requirements of ADAPCA. We recommend that you ensure fair enforcement and dispute resolution. Now, for the midterm recommendations, this is where we should be going in terms of our regulatory future. Continuing to improve the metrics gathered to analyze and understand outcomes in healthcare and base performance decisions on those metrics. Increase collaboration between and among providers and state surveyors. Increase incentives for high quality performance. convene stakeholder process to define a long-term care service and supports licensing and certification protocol that is commensurate with the new healthcare delivery reality. Again, Leading Age thanks you for this invitation to participate and shares perspective on regulation and oversight of nursing homes. I would be pleased to respond to any questions.
Thank you very much. Turn to my colleagues first for any questions. Dr. Pan?
Actually, just a couple of factual questions, actually perhaps directed to Mr. Robinson. In a nursing home, I realize there's a variety of patients. What's the average length of stay of a nursing home resident? I'm trying to remember what the statewide data is.
The overwhelming, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
The overwhelming majority stay a very short period of time. The long-term stays are a very small percentage.
So about how long is that? I've heard 3 months is but is that the?
I'd like to give you an actual number on that. So let me get back to you on that, and I can give you a more definitive range. But yes,
Okay.
it is a shorter period of time.
Okay, but that's, I mean, I'm not saying that is the number, but that sounds approximately
Correct.
in the right range. Okay. And the average time at work of, again, I realize it's of the staff who's being certified, the CNA, how long do they usually stay in a facility on the average, time of employment of let's say a CNA at a nursing?
So how long the CNA is employed with a
what's the
specific-
turnover rate? Right, yeah. Sorry.
That I don't know, and I'm happy to get back to you on that.
Okay. Well, I think that, so I think it's been raised before, but just trying to put some context into the fact that if you have suppose the average length of stay is approximately 3 months, somewhere in that range, if you're not doing an investigation that doesn't get done, you're gonna, and usually that means you're gonna lose most of the people you have who, whether it's the resident or the staff person in that period of time, and I think that certainly would be very concerning. So I think there's lots of different ways we can look at what the appropriate period of time, and I hear you say 45 days. I think the advocates are saying 40. That's not all that far off. I realize that what Senator Yamada said, it's hard to actually say when you finish because you don't want to force someone to finish if they're still in the middle of an investigation, given the circumstances may be particularly complex. But I think we also need to recognize is that that delays that occur have, and we've already mentioned the consequences, but how consequential that can become, especially given, depending on the length of the delay, but also given just what we already know about the circumstances in any particular facility. And I appreciate the fact that on both, this is about this both is important for patients to improve the quality, but also for institutions to be sure they can protect, to be sure that they either identify a problem or recognize that it's not an issue for them, that instead of having it drag out as well. So thank you so much. Sorry for pinning you down on those questions.
It's okay. Any other questions from colleagues? One other thought popped into my mind from my years of civil rights investigations, and that is there was a 180-day standard that we as investigators for the feds were under to complete our investigations. If we did not complete, then the individual had the right to sue. So it gave us administrative encouragement to get on the ground and get our investigations completed. But, I don't know if that model will translate over to what we're dealing with. Anyway, thank you both very much for your testimony and for your specific suggestions. This is only the beginning of our conversation, though, so let's just do this now. If there are no other questions from any of the members, we are going to invite now public comment. I apologize. Did I miss something? Oh, okay. I apologize. That's right. We're going to have the opportunity for DPH to come back, if they so choose now, to provide us any feedback. You're right. Missed that portion. And I'll have Dr. Pan, since I missed the agenda there for a second, come back and do some quick responses, and then we will have some additional time for public comment.
So
Because
the department could please come back to the
come back.
stand, and perhaps if you can give a 3 to 5 minute, I realize
You've heard a
a
lot.
comment on the prior testimony, and then maybe perhaps a few more questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Dr. Ron Chapman again, State Health Officer, Director, California Department of Public Health. I appreciate all of the testimony that we've heard this afternoon. I think personally it was enlightening to hear, but I think also raised a number of questions. We certainly will be working hard to clarify some of the discrepancies that we heard in the numbers. I'm not exactly sure we're comparing apples to apples, so we need to circle back and figure that out. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Pam Dickfoss, the interim deputy director, and we hear loud and clear some of the comments that were made today, and we take them very seriously. There is a multitude of data that we collect, both in the federal database and in the licensing database. So there's a lot of different analyses going on, and we'll do our best to try to compare some of the numbers that were referenced today in the hearing along with our numbers and provide you any additional information that you request.
I mean, I also just want to point out that the department is making progress. We still have a ways to go. You know, that is clear. Hopefully you heard that from our testimony. Certainly you heard it from others. And we're working very hard to make the improvements that we need to make. Thanks.
So I guess so one of the things that I know that Senator Brown mentioned, and it's been mentioned before, is actually having a grid that would say, you know, complaints, how many days initiated, et cetera, and then how long, and then when it's finally closed. So it would be good to have a sense of the pattern. I mean, there was some reference made to being referred for criminal. I think that between 2010 and 2012, there's actually a decrease in the number of referrals to DOJ, and actually the numbers were 14 versus 88. So if there were 700, the number of criminal referrals seems to be a very small portion of that. So I mean, we need a breakout of what, you know, and analysis of the cause of delay. But I think more importantly, perhaps, is that. And here we're just kind of scraping the surface. We're just talking about how long things take, and then we're not looking at, so what is the quality in investigation and so forth. I mean, you have really qualified staff, so, but I think it's important to, you know, what are the ongoing findings. But I think the other thing that I'd like to hear is that, so first of all, the question is that what you've described today, are there additional things in terms of your action plan? Are you currently working on a more detailed action plan to address these issues? If you are, at what time should we expect a report back from the department about what that action plan is, and the metrics in which you are going to use to measure the success or lack of success in the action plan, in which case you would then, you know, think about, and then again, another part of the timeline is that, okay, now you have when we expect the action plan and the metrics, and then the time at which you would be evaluating the success or lack of success of that action plan. So so perhaps you can give us a roadmap to the future so that we can get this problem resolved.
Well, as was mentioned earlier in the testimony, we do have an outside contractor that is looking at all of our workload, both state and federal. They're going to do a gap analysis. The report is due at the end of June. We're meeting with them each week. We have dashboard reports that they've developed for us so we can track the ongoing compliance with complaint investigations. We're in daily contact with the district offices. We are taking steps to really address the outstanding backlog that's been there for several years. We've aggressively hired our staff. We've had, over the past few years, 11% vacancy rate. We've got the nurses down to 4% now. We plan to overhire by approximately 50 positions in anticipation of retirements and turnover. And so we're taking steps to go beyond what we have done in the past.
Okay, so I'm going to get a little more concrete here then. So I understand there will be a report at the end of June from a consultant. Is that report the departmental action plan that we would be shared with the legislature in terms of how we're planning to solve these issues?
Well, we'll work with the contractor, I mean, to put our action plan forward based on what the response is from the report. But we're working independently as a department right now to address these issues.
So what, give me a time frame. When will the department present a report to us saying, this is our plan moving forward to address this problem? It's clearly has been long-standing. It's not
Yes.
just something that's happened this year. So, I mean, we know that there's going to be a consultant report in June. When does the department believe that there will be something that they can present to the legislature and the public in terms of saying, this is how we're going to, based on all the information we've gathered, our investigation, and so forth. I mean, right now it is now January, so we're already talking 5 months later, saying, okay, this is what we're doing. This is how we're changing. I mean, you're already changing things, so this is things we've changed. These are things that major things we're going to change, and these are the metrics by which we're going to measure the success or lack of success of this plan moving forward. When should we hear back from you? I'm giving you a chance to define that time instead of me picking that time for you.
Yeah, I think we would need at least a couple of months to report back to you.
A couple months from, pick a
From
date.
now.
Huh? From now? Okay, so sometime, so this is January, so from March, so even before the consultant report?
Well,
No, that's-
if
which
you
is
just
fine.
want to have a status on how far we progressed from there, we could do
No.
that in a couple months. If you want our final report, I believe we'd have to wait until we get the consultant's final report.
Okay, and then when you get your status, is that going to include, I mean, obviously status includes metrics, right? So,
Yes.
So
Yes.
a couple months from now, we should be able, that the department has identified identified the metrics that they want to measure success or failure, and also what the current measurements are for those metrics, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's, okay, 2 months. All right, and then you're expecting the consultant report in June, so you expect that
Sebastian.
that will be, again, one of the inputs in as well as multiple other ones, and so
That is our goal.
August? September?
We could shoot for end of August.
Okay.
I mean, it's-
All right. I mean, I realize things happen and so forth, but I think it's always helpful. I always like to have, and we're trying to work with you too. So I may
understand. We
realize,
appreciate
but,
that.
so, okay.
Yes, we are trying to establish a timeline.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
If I may follow up
Please.
quickly.
Miss-
Oh,
Ms.
Assembly
Yamada, I just
Member
wanted to say very quickly,
Brown.
just to follow up on Dr. Pan. If in fact you're going to do and request them to do this, I think that 2 months and then the next 2 months and then the next, that it's a benchmark and that each time we can have some work product. So to me, that seems that it's the best way to go instead of waiting until the end of the session, which will be, we'll be really, really busy, and then come back with something like this.
It would be more like a progress report and a status of where we are.
Right. Well, I think the most important thing is, one is that we need to have the metrics, right, of how so it's not the plan, but because it sounds like there's a lot of confusion about numbers even. So let's have clear, transparent metrics about what we're measuring, so that we know that, so we can actually measure whether we're where we want to be or where we're not. So, right, if we can't agree on that, then we're really in trouble. And then certainly, and I want to recognize you've already talked about. I'm not saying that you're not doing anything. So you are doing things. You're going to continue to do things. And you mentioned that you have your consult. But I also want to sort of say, okay, at what point do we sort of pulled everything together and say, this is our plan moving forward. We have our metrics. We're going to be looking at that. And then clearly there's going to be a time after that where we're going to say, okay, now that looking at our metrics, this plan is working or it's not working, right? And then we need to either make major changes or this is good and we just keep going, right? So I think that's I'm just trying to put down at least plant some markers about what times that we should expect based on your knowledge that we should be looking for these things. So what I'm hearing is that in March we should be having metrics and of course filled in with the numbers of how things are going well, and that in August you will have hopefully by then have coalesced into, with all the different things, a sort of a more comprehensive action plan for essentially addressing this fundamental problem, and hopefully by the following January, we'll be having good news about
Yes.
our on those reports. Okay.
Fair enough. I did have one other follow-up question, if I may, for the department before maybe we go to public comment. I did note in our issue paper, which, by the way, I want to compliment everyone's hard work on that. I think it was a good statement of what we're addressing today, that the last couple of years, 2010 to 11 and 2011 to 2012, for some reason, the department did not report the percentage completion rate for your complaint investigations. There's a chart in our issue paper, which I believe you all have, that indicated that you would report the total number of complaints received, the total number requiring investigation, and the completion rate within a certain range of days. Was there some reason that, and I think you're required to report